Good morning, all. As we enter into this service, please note that those of you participating via Zoom have been muted by our host, and we ask that all in-house participants please remain masked while in the sanctuary. And quiet your cell phones now. We can say that again now. Also, be advised that this service is being recorded, and with the exception of joys and concerns, will be published online. Finally, if you wish, take a moment to arrange your own chalice at home. I keep looking for one more teacher, only to find that fish learn from water and birds from sky. Birds learn from sky. If you want to learn about the sea, it helps to be at sea. If you want to learn about compassion, it helps to be in love. If you want to learn about healing, it helps to know of suffering. The strong live in the storm without worshiping the storm. That was Behind the Thunder by Mark Nepo. Who would like to light the chalice today? Okay, Janet. I forgot to pick someone. I invite you all to light your own chalice and place it where it can be seen by all of us if you're able. We come together to light the chalice of our community, both in person and virtually, as a way of reminding ourselves of our common light, the spark within, the light we carry, and the light we give away. May we fan the flame of spirit within ourselves and each other with encouragement, with compassion, with a willingness to be a witness, knowing that it is enough. It is more than enough. It is what we came for. Michael Eselun, as he's lighting his chalice. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind our remote participants to leave yourselves muted and our in-house participants to remain masked. However, we want you and whoever is with you to sing with Mary and Jan as big and loud as you like. Make it a joyous experience. So let's all stand if you are able and sing the opening hymn, How Happy Are They?
Whose armor is their own.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria with our heaters working. Yeah. We are glad you have joined us today. We acknowledge that our UUCC sanctuary stands on land that was once inhabited by coastal Chumash and Salinan indigenous peoples whose ancestors lived primarily in San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. As a Unitarian Universalist community, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation, inviting speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds in our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a variety of topics and areas of interest to our community that connect with the UU 7 principles. Might be 8 soon, okay? Today's service centers around principle number 3, which is, we affirm and promote acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Spiritual growth isn't about a vertical ascent to heaven, but about growth in every dimension at once. It's spirituality in 3D. Growth in spirit doesn't measure one's proximity to a God above, but rather the spaciousness of one's own soul, its volume, its capacity, its size. We need souls that can take in the world in all its complexity and diversity, yet still maintain our integrity. And we need souls that can love and be in relationship with all of this complexity. Instead of fight or flight, we need a spiritual posture of embrace. My name is Dolores Miera. Thank you, hello. Okay. And I am your worship associate this morning. I would like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We're glad you've joined us this morning. And if you're not on our mailing list, please visit the UUCC website at uuccambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all of our activities. And please check out What's Happening, a weekly e-blast sent to all members and friends. It's a great way to keep up with what's happening in this community. As a reminder, if you wish to see this or any past Zoom services again, recordings of these services can be found on the UUCC website and Facebook, and also YouTube, right? We end up on YouTube every week. It's like, we're on YouTube. Okay, the membership committee invites non-members to consider joining this community. Please contact Diane DeMarco or a person on the board if you're interested. Thank you. So again, good morning and welcome to everyone. It is nice to see people here. Right? To tell you the truth, I'm an okay person with Zoom, but it's really nice to be back all together. So thank you. The affirmation is both a recognition of the nature of this community as well as a promise we make to aspire to. Let us now recite the UUCC affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth and freedom, and to help one another. We set aside this time for any short announcements that would be of interest to our UU community members and friends. Please keep your items short and to the point. For any items that need more explanation, please call or email the person after the service to be respectful of everyone's time. If you have an announcement, please raise your hand. And when Andy or I call in your name, please stand and unmute yourself, then speak. So anyone in the sanctuary have an announcement? First one is Kathy. Oh, and then it'll be Jan after Kathy.
Can I come down?
Yes, You might have to bend over at the microphone if you stand on that thing.
Okay, this is letting everybody know we're going to have fun coming your way in the form of a UUCC garage sale. It'll be Friday, March 25th from 9 to noon. The notice will be out in the next 2 Tuesdays, Lori's e-blast. And your hostesses in this fun endeavor will be Judy Butler, garage sale maven, myself, maven number 2, and a dutiful assistant, Sue Davis. If you have a table, it would be great if you could bring it. We will have tables provided by assistant number 2, Dolores Miera, who will bring all of the UU tables over to my house. Anyway, and you need to RSVP because I need to, for one, we need to make sure we'll have enough tables. As you know, my spaces might be a little tight here and there. So I need to know whether I'm going to ask my neighbor or we're going to be on the street or expand out of the driveway. So it's important that everybody RSVPs, especially those who are going to need a table. If you would price all of your items first, that would be great. Stay and sell all of your items, have a lot of fun, and then at the end, take anything away if it's not sold. And just to let everybody know, I don't have any supplies, paper, wrapping, if you bring a little set of dishes or wine glasses to sell, bring whatever you need for this event, different than in the past. So see you there or be square.
Announcement number 2. Ooh, I feel tall. Immediately following the covenant meeting, the next day, March 26th, I will be doing a concert at the Harmony Cafe, Nostalgia in Black and White, a tribute to an amazing songwriter of 50 years. People probably don't know his music, but you will after next Saturday night at the Harmony Cafe. If you're interested, let me know. Tickets are going fast. Thank you. My turn. Andy, am I up?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. I'm representing the scholarship committee, and Steve Nathanson and Robert Wilkinson and I spent all day Thursday listening to 43 interviews with the high school graduates from Coast Union. And I only had to turn my camera off twice to compose myself. It's just some of the most distressful success stories because these kids are graduating. I mean, it's a miracle they even got here, some of them. We have, so far, I think, enough money to give 7 scholarships. Unfortunately, there's 11 on our list, but if you'd like to make a contribution, now would be the time to do it, please. Just make a check out. You can send it right to the post office box, or you can give it to me. UUCC, your check, and then in the memo line, put scholarship fund. Any help you can give would be so appreciated. Thank you.
Any other announcements in-house? Okay, I have one, and then I'll give it to Andy. Our next covenant meeting is Saturday, March 26th at 1 o'clock to 2:30 before Mary Ann's concert. And we encourage everyone to attend, even if you did not make it to the first meeting. Come and learn how to live in covenant with each other. This is what UUCC is all about. We have cookies and coffee as a treat for those who attend. Andy, over to you in Zoom land.
Thank you, Dolores. I don't see any hands raised. I will just make one announcement that the meditation group got off to a great start this past Thursday at 10 a.m. and will continue every Thursday, 10 a.m. here in the sanctuary. You don't have to be an expert meditator. Just come and join our Sangha, our community, and we'll share an hour together. Thank you. No other hands, Dolores. Back to you.
Okay, I have one more. Janet here.
There's a potluck coming up next Saturday, March 19th. It's going to be at Joel's house at 5 p.m. and we hope to see you all there.
First potluck in a while. 2 years? Yeah. Okay. Next week, Darcy Lober will present Finding Balance before launching into spring. And now, a message from our board.
Good morning. Ooh. In this particular spot in our order service, birthdays of that month are recognized on the first Sunday, and we hear testimony from a member during the moment of witness on the third Sunday of each month. Today, on behalf of the Board of Trustees and with the blessing of the Worship Committee, I'm here to announce that at this time, on the fourth Sunday of every month, the Sunday following a monthly board meeting, you will hear from one of its members a brief report, a summation of key items discussed and voted on during that meeting. In this way, the board and its membership can stay more connected. And as a side benefit, you'll become more acquainted with the members of the UCC Board of Trustees. And I am Randy Schwalbe, and the duly elected secretary of this year's board. And I will briefly report on the first two meetings of the year. At the January meeting, the December minutes were approved. The treasurer reported just under $1.8 thousand gross revenue and just over $1.7 thousand in expenditures, resulting in a plus $47 net revenue. The treasurer's report was approved and is available for review on the members only page of the UUCC website. Rebecca Hendricks gave a debrief of the We Care Ad Hoc Committee's efforts regarding the feedback from the membership survey. Joel Kane reported on the termite situation in Arlington Square and the 2 units occupied by the UCC in particular. Efforts are being made to control the infestation. However, short of tenting, the problem will persist. The board retreat was planned for March 5th. At the February meeting, the January minutes were approved. The treasurer's report was just under $14.2 thousand gross revenue and just under $5,000 in expenditures, resulting in a $9.2 thousand net revenue. Speaker fees, transportation, payroll, and utilities internet are tracking over budget. The treasurer's report was approved and is available for review in the members only page of the UCC website. A motion was passed to forgive the remaining unpaid pledge amount by crediting the account of members and friends who have not completed funding of their 2021 pledges. A motion to transfer enough funds from the projects and initiatives line item to cover the remainder of the rental of the Camp Ocean Pines for the board retreat was passed. As the membership director, Diane DeMarco, led a discussion regarding the feedback she had received from exit interviews. And finally, a special announcement: the March meeting, originally scheduled for the usual third Monday of the month at 5 p.m., was moved up one day to Sunday, March 20th at 5 p.m. on Zoom. Please notify a board member if you wish to attend. Thank you.
Woo! Thank you, Randy. Sharing together some of our personal and significant joys and concerns brings us closer as a faith community. We invite you to share the milestones that are deeply felt as part of your personal life. But please be mindful and considerate of all who come to worship with us this morning. This is a time of community building. The collective flames of these candles embody all the joys and sorrows which may have gone unspoken today, but are also deeply felt in this community. Our first reading, What You Missed That Day That You Were Absent from 4th Grade, written by Brad Aaron Maudlin. Mrs. Nelson explained how to stand still and listen to the wind, how to find meaning in pumping gas, how peeling potatoes can be a form of prayer. She took questions on how not to feel lost in the dark. After lunch, she distributed worksheets that covered ways to remember your grandfather's voice. Then the class discussed falling asleep without feeling you had forgotten to do something else, something important, and how to believe the house you wake up in is your home. This prompted Mrs. Nelson to draw a chalkboard diagram detailing how to chant the Psalms during cigarette breaks, and how not to squirm for sound when your own thoughts are all you hear. Also, that you have enough. The English lesson was that I am is a complete sentence. And just before the afternoon bell, she made the math equation look easy. the one that proves that hundreds of questions and feeling cold, and all those nights spent looking for whatever it was you lost, and one person add up to something. As we enter into this sacred time of silent reflection, I invite us to get comfortable in our seats, close our eyes, and take a few nice deep breaths together, just following the empty breath. As we breathe, we let go of the concerns and thoughts of the day, of the week behind us, or the week ahead of us, the year behind us, or the year ahead of us. And we allow ourselves to breathe into this moment, now, in stillness. We breathe into the place beneath such concerns, where we can remember that as we all sit together in silence, we are at the very center of our being, of the same essence, cut from the same cloth, yearning for the same peace, the same joy, carrying the same sorrows, sitting together in silence. We pray to you, Mother Earth, with humility. Help us to remember our place in the great web of life. Help us to remember that we are but a part of this great web, and that we must do our part for all life. Reverend Lucy Bunch. The second reading is a video of the book Ish by Peter Reynolds.
Ish by Peter H. Reynolds. Ish. Ramon loved to draw. Anytime, anything, anywhere. One day, Ramon was drawing a vase of flowers. His brother, Leon, leaned over his shoulder. Leon burst out laughing. "What is that?" he asked. Ramon could not even answer. He just crumpled up the drawing and threw it across the room. Leon's laughter haunted Ramon. He kept trying to make his drawings look right, but they never did. After many months and many crumpled sheets of paper, Ramon put his pencil down. "I'm done." Marisol, his sister, was watching him. "What do you want?" he snapped. "I was watching you draw," she said. Ramon sneered. "I'm not drawing. Go away." Marisol ran away, but not before picking up a crumpled sheet of paper. "Hey, come back here with that." Ramon raced after Marisol, up the hall and into her room. He was about to yell, but fell silent when he saw his sister's walls. He stared at the crumpled gallery. "This is one of my favorites," Marisol said, pointing. "That was supposed to be a vase of flowers," Ramon said, "but it doesn't look like one." "Well, it looks vase-ish," she exclaimed. face-ish? Ramon looked closer. Then he studied all the drawings on Marisol's walls and began to see them in a whole new way. They do look ish, he said. Ramon felt light and energized. Thinking ishly allowed his ideas to flow freely. He began to draw what he felt, loose lines quickly springing out without worry. Ramon once again drew and drew the world around him. Making an ish drawing felt wonderful. He filled his journals, tree-ish, house-ish, boat-ish, afternoon-ish, fish-ish, sun-ish. Ramon realized he could draw his ish feelings too. Peace-ish, silly-ish, excited-ish. His ish art inspired ish writing. He wasn't sure if he was writing poems, but he knew they were poem-ish. Ponder, pond, ponder, dream, wander. Pond, pond, yond, yond, gleam, wander, Ramon. One spring morning, Ramon had a wonderful feeling. It was a feeling that even ish words and ish drawings could not capture. He decided not to capture it. Instead, he simply savored it. And Ramon lived ishfully ever after. The end-ish.
Please join in singing Moonshadow by Yosef, also known as Cat Stevens.
Leaping and hopping on a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow. And if I ever lose my hands, lose my plow, lose my land, and if I ever lose my hands, oh, if I won't have to work no more, and if I ever lose my eyes, if my color all runs dry, yes, if I ever lose my eyes, oh, if I won't have to cry no more. Oh, I'm being followed by a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow, leaping and hopping on a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow. And if I ever lose my legs, I won't moan and I won't beg. And if I ever lose my legs, oh, I won't have to cry anymore. If I ever lose my mouth or my teeth, north and south, and if I ever lose my mouth, oh, if I won't have to talk. Did it take long to find me? I asked the faithful line. Did it take long to find me? And are you gonna stay the night? I'm being followed by a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow, leaping and hopping on a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Jan. Today's sermon, titled Spiritual Report Cards, to be delivered by Michael Eselun. Michael Eselun serves as the chaplain for the Sims Mann UCLA Center for Integrative Oncology, two-time TEDx speaker, Michael speaks extensively to healthcare professionals, patient populations, and faith communities across the country. He also worked as an activist, educator, addressing anti-LGBTQ bias in the larger community for over 30 years. Michael was recently inducted into the UCLA Semel Institute Eudaimonia Society in recognition of having lived a meaning-driven life. He has 4 volumes of CDs available for purchase. Contact Michael through his website, which is www.michaeleselun.com. Michael.
Good morning. I have been running away from failure ever since I was first aware there was such a thing as a report card. I couldn't imagine anything worse than getting an F, the humiliation, the disgrace. So I made sure that I never did. Still, a 4.0 GPA ultimately was flimsy proof indeed of any kind of self-worth. I lived through my school years believing that my self-worth and my GPA were one and the same thing. Still, a string of A's did offer some momentary consolation and camouflage, if you will, for my true failure as a boy, as a straight boy doing straight boy things, not like the other boys at all. I wonder how many of us still live our lives as if there will be a report card at the end, as if we will somehow be judged ultimately on how meaningful our life was, our work was, how much money we made, how many things we acquired, what kind of a parent were we? Or conversely, living with the bone-chilling fear that I must have been absent that day, unaware that this particular moral challenge would be on the final exam, and I blew it. Sharon is facing the end of her life, ovarian cancer. She wrestles with that very fear. Michael, I think I've lived a decent life and that I've been a good person, but I've made my mistakes. I have regrets, big ones. What if I don't get into heaven? As if she will be judged ultimately on her resume instead of, say, the love that's in her heart, if she's even to be judged at all. My grandmother, Barbara, my dad's mom, was one tough cookie. So tough, in fact, that her standard reply to the greeting, "How are you?" was, "I'm just as mean as usual." I don't believe in failure, she would say. There's no such thing because you can always learn something. It's a pretty common perception, particularly among those given to positive thinking as a way of navigating through life, and certainly within the mythos of American notions of success. But what I found lacking in my grandmother's declaration was compassion. If I were brokenhearted that I didn't get the thing I wanted more than anything else, devastated really after working so hard to get it, I really didn't want to hear, "Well, I'm not going to feel sorry for you because you're going to learn something through this." That wasn't helpful at all in the moment, even if it proved to be true in time. Compassion, after all, only means to be with suffering, to be with it, not to fix it, advise it, or correct it. Authentic compassion for ourselves and one another might be the one true great healer, and yet it's not a quality I've ever seen on any report card or any measuring stick for success. At the same time, I do resonate deeply with the writings of Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl. In the end, everything can be taken from a man, but this one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. So maybe it is up to us ultimately to cast the final grade, to call it a success or failure. But I struggle with this all too human urge to cast any verdict at all, to see life and things through this dualistic lens of success and failure, win and lose. What if it's not so simple as that, not so clear-cut as that? In the early 90s, a big economic recession hit Los Angeles. I had a design business at the time and business fell off to zero. I needed to do something quick. As a stopgap survival strategy, I took the CBEST test, I got an emergency teaching credential, and I was hired to be a substitute school teacher for Inglewood Unified School District. This was a few weeks after the Rodney King uprisings in LA. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but soon enough, I discovered I did not have the constitution to face those schools every day. So on my off days, I volunteered at Project Angel Food, delivering home-cooked meals to homebound people with AIDS. These were the peak years of the AIDS crisis. I also got involved with a fledgling volunteer AIDS hospice group called Project Nightlight. But at the time, I felt like an abject failure, the loser of the world. Nobody could convince me otherwise. I assiduously avoided friends who might call me, dare to ask the unthinkable question, so what are you doing these days? What's more, I felt like a spiritual failure. I was convinced that God had dispensed all the components necessary to live a successful life to everyone else except me, firmly attached to that idea. And yet, when I look back on that point in time now, some 30 years later, I see it as the pivot point that made this part of my life possible. And this career of chaplaincy that I love so much, that gives my life meaning, that holds the door open for it all to make sense. So am I to look back on that point in time now and call it a success, even a blessing? Hurting so badly that I wanted to die? The older I get, I find the less patience I have for that either or, black and white kind of thinking. In the world of cancer, the stakes are much higher when it comes to our conception of success and failure. If this diagnosis means the imminent end of my physical body, does that mean that Western medicine failed, my doctor failed, this drug trial failed, my positive affirmations failed, my vegan diet failed, my acupuncturist failed, my prayers failed, God failed me, I failed God? These profound experiences of failure are not just the province of patients. Over the years of walking beside dozens and dozens of those left behind, the bereaved, they too wrestle almost universally with deep experiences of failure. If I hadn't spent so much time at work, I could have taken better care of her. She may still be here. If it weren't for my own depression and anxiety, I know I caused her so much distress, and that's why the cancer came back. It's my fault. If I had just insisted that we go to the doctor sooner, if I had insisted that we get a second opinion, he may still be here. The thing about needing to cast a verdict one way or the other is that seldom do I see that there is the space and opportunity for the verdict to be not guilty. Deanna is living with an aggressive colon cancer. She's also deeply rooted in this sort of new age philosophy that would say she can create her life exactly as she envisions it through positive affirmation and prayer and faith. And up until now, that system has worked rather well for her. She's found herself a wonderful mate. She continues to enjoy increasing success in her real estate business. She's a planner and a goal setter. She likes to set goals with nice measurable outcomes. So each win only deepens and solidifies her faith that much more. How could it be otherwise? But now the tables have turned. Her cancer has progressed and her prognosis is not so good. That whole paradigm of setting goals becomes far more complicated, even murky. When cure is medically off the table, what goal can she set? Just more time living with chronic illness, with chronic cancer. What's more, she feels like a spiritual failure. Michael, I guess my faith just wasn't strong enough. My affirmations weren't powerful enough. It's my fault. Over 20 years ago, I was covering an overnight on-call shift at the hospital, and late one Sunday night, I was paged to come up to the ICU because an elderly woman, the matriarch of a large African-American family, was very near death. And the family wanted some support and a prayer. I offered them that and I left. A couple hours later, I was paged to return up to the unit because the woman had passed. And the family now wanted company while they waited for their pastor to arrive. Once he arrived, he took one look at the scene and he said, "It looks like you all didn't pray hard enough." as if this loving family had failed their mother, as if death itself were a failure. And if that's true, all of us are guaranteed an F on our final report card. Spiritual success, spiritual failure, these are tricky concepts, again, with this either or kind of thinking. Over the years, I've walked beside countless folks, many religious, many not at all, but they struggle with the same yearning, the same longing. I wish I had stronger faith. I wish I believed more. I wish I knew. When we tease apart, what do you really mean by that, strong faith? It usually means certainty. I want to know that I'm going to be okay. I want to know that this drug trial is going to work. I want to know that this radiation will work. I want to know that God's in my corner. The German-American theologian Paul Tillich says the opposite of faith isn't doubt, it's certainty. If I'm certain, it's not really faith anymore, is it? Faith, in my view, might better be described as a willingness to step off into the unknown with my fears and doubts in tow and continuing to walk anyway, with my eyes and heart open, with curiosity, with patience, with humility, and with compassion. With Deanna, who loved to set goals for herself, we looked at what another kind of goal might be that does not have such a measurable outcome. What about a goal of coming to peace with uncertainty, with her own powerlessness, even coming to peace with loss, offering herself the grace to be a human being? In this time of COVID and all of these extreme measures under which we've had to endure as we try to contain this pandemic, there are many of us, myself included, who have sought to somehow reframe our idea of what spiritual success looks like. A whole new report card, if you will. The times seem to demand it. And there are those eternally optimistic, faithful folks who have likened this to a golden opportunity, a chance to hit the reset button for life on planet Earth, to refine and distill all of the extraneous down to what's absolutely essential. And they embrace this. Not me. I grieve. I never realized just how much of an extrovert I am, that for me, real human contact in time and space, there's life force in that. There's oxygen in that for me. That kind of connection and connectedness comes very close to the meaning of life itself for me. And so it is that for me, sitting in a darkened, sold-out theater, knee to knee with strangers, being moved to laughter or tears by the same humanity that's on the stage, becomes a religious rite. It's a ritual, just as it is for me to sweat with my chums on Saturday afternoon, dancing in the same dance class, in the same studio, in front of the same mirror, dancing to the same music. And afterward, getting to partake in Holy Communion, complaining about everything that hurts. Just as it is to travel to some faraway land and get lost in some alleyway among locals, many of whom may never have even heard of Los Angeles. Just as it is to hug someone in trouble, a patient, a friend, a loved one, a stranger. So much so that when it has seemed that these experiences are off the table for the foreseeable future, maybe even for the rest of my life, I'm embarrassed to say that a part of me wondered whether life was even worth it or not. Coming face to face with the limitations on my resilience, on my adaptability, not like those spiritually optimistic folks at all who embrace this. And so in those times, I feel like a spiritual failure, a spiritual weakling, and I give myself an F. By contrast, Bernadette, 31 years old, seems to live life with this unbelievable capacity for curiosity and acceptance. She seems to live in the place of, gee, I wonder what that would be like. So much so that when she began her chemotherapy and her beautiful head of red hair began to fall out, we had that conversation I have with so many who meet this crucible. How will they do it? Some will preemptively shave their heads as a self-empowering gesture. Some might make a lighthearted ritual out of it, dye their hair green and invite friends over to help them shave their heads. No, she said, I think it'd be really interesting just to see what it's like to have your hair fall out. When she completed her treatment and that year had come to a close, we were looking back on the year and she said, Michael, I guess I'd have to say, all in all, it was a pretty good year after all. Bernadette, in a year that included a cancer diagnosis, chemotherapy, a radical double mastectomy, radiation, if that doesn't make for a bad year, what on earth would? Oh, I don't know, she said, losing my sense of humor, I guess. A spirit like that cannot be broken. I walked beside Grace over the last 6 years of her life, living with metastatic breast cancer. Grace had lived a life of dizzying twists and turns, both personally and professionally, zigzagging her way across the country. I asked her once, if you were to have a grandchild or a small child came to you and said, Grace, what piece of wisdom do you have for me after having lived such an interesting life? She didn't take much time at all to answer. When the time comes, be ready to go, she said. She actually echoes Joseph Campbell as he describes the hero's journey. In order to be a hero, one must be prepared for when the time comes. That may be the point of all spirituality. Donna and Lois have shared the last 40 plus years of their lives together. They are so at ease with one another, so devoted to one another. They've kept together a sense of family in a culture that is utterly hostile to two women calling themselves a family. Lois has been living with ovarian cancer for the last 7 years. As her disease has progressed, she's made the choice to take advantage of aid in dying medication for when the time came and it got to be too rough. She's a vibrant, vivacious, no-nonsense gal who would much rather hear what you've got to say than tell her story one more time. Sometimes it was hard to know just how much she was suffering because she carried her pain with such grace. While in her late 70s and thoroughly contemporary, she knows her way around a computer, she was also deeply rooted in old school values like letter writing and sending thank you notes. One Saturday night, she leaned over and told Donna, honey, I think the time has come and I'm going to take the medication tomorrow morning. Donna said, well, honey, if it hurts that bad, why don't we do it tonight? I can't. I got too many things to do. What do you have to do? She said. I've got some bills to pay and some birthday cards to send and some thank you notes to write. Well, I'll help you do that, Donna said. So on the last night of her life, after nearly 80 years of being on planet Earth, they sat around the dining table, engaged in the most mundane activities imaginable, but activities that are nevertheless rooted in connectedness, connection, and kindness. That is an image of spiritual success to me. This moment is enough. This activity is enough. This time is enough. The next morning, she got up and put on her best red silk pajamas and said, I guess I might as well go out in style. If there were such a thing as spiritual report cards, I'd give them both an A+. As I would to Bernadette for her unbelievable capacity for curiosity and acceptance and humor, as I would to Grace for her phenomenal ability to ride the wave of life. If there is such a thing as spiritual report cards, as spiritual success, I imagine it's rooted in our capacity for compassion, for ourselves, for one another, for our lives as they are and as they are not, offering ourselves grace to be a human being with loss, with fear, with all of it. And paradoxically, there might even be a new kind of power in that, an even deeper kind of power. This strong faith without a shred of certainty inside. I'm a big documentary film fan. I remember in 1995, a wonderful Oscar-nominated documentary called Troublesome Creek. It's the story of a family farm in Iowa that had been in the family for generations, over 125 years. Russell and Mary continue to work the farm, though they're much older now, having raised their kids who have all grown up and moved on. But they're facing foreclosure now because of a farming crisis. So it's all hands on deck. All the kids come back to Iowa doing what they can to help save the family farm. We're given to believe it will kill their mom and dad if they lose the farm and have to move into town. So you're kind of dying a little bit as you're watching them auction off the farm equipment and the livestock and the furniture. You see Mary caressing her Ethan Allen dining table, sighing, oh, the Thanksgiving dinners I've served at this table. Sold. They can't lose the farm, but they do lose the farm, and they have to move to town. And to everyone's shock and amazement, Russell and Mary thrive. Russell's a new man, unencumbered by this backbreaking labor and nonstop worries. One of those guys that had these wild, bushy, untamed eyebrows. You wonder, what's up with that, Russell? And there he is in the barber chair, getting them all trimmed up, looking his best. I'll never forget the last line of the film. Their daughter Jean is narrating. Success and failure. Sometimes it's hard to tell which is which. Yes, it is. So be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. The morning offering will now be given and received. Please keep in mind that this congregation is entirely self-governed by the democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all of the financial support for the many ministries from among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and institutional well-being. If you are invited to participate in the blessing of giving. For those at home, please use one of the methods shown on the screen. Thank you. Our thanks for all gifts given and received for the work of this community. Let's all now sing the doxology. Please stand if you're able and join in singing the closing hymn, When the Spirit Says Do.
hard. Okay, let's start. Okay. We got, all right. Yeah. You got to do when the Spirit says do. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do. Oh Lord, you got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you got to sing. Oh Lord, you got to sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 You got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. You got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. When the Spirit says laugh, you got to laugh. Oh Lord, you got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. 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 You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. You got to shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you got to shout. Oh Lord, you got to shout when the Spirit says shout. 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 When the Spirit says do, that's it. You got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do. Oh Lord, you got to do when the Spirit says do. 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 Spirit says do.
Nice. Let us now recite the valediction. The flame of this chalice will no longer burn today, but the light of the flame within our hearts continues to shine brightly, illuminating the love felt in our community. Please extinguish your chalice at home. If you wish to make a comment or a question after the benediction, please click on the gallery view button in the upper right corner of your screen, but please remain muted. Andy or I will call on you when you raise your hand. Michael.
I invite us to close our eyes and take a few nice deep breaths together. We might imagine that we could take hands with one another in a great circle. And as we do, we feel the energy that passes between us and connects us in the family of things. In that place, might we remember to hang on to one another, to that connection, and loosen our grip just a bit on our need for things to be one thing or the other, our desire to cast a verdict, to call it a success or failure, to write a final report card. In this place, may we all be allowed to be who we are, as we are, where we are, with grace and with compassion. So be it.